So right here is an opportunity to engage with a little truth serum. Recent insight that's arisen to the surface is that we actually have a lot of structuring in our lives that keep us away from our truest nature. Or we could say we have a lot of structuring that we utilize to stay away from what we feel. We could say that thoughts, feelings, and these particular experiences are ultimately at the baseline of what it is to be a human being, but we could also say that thoughts, reactions, and distractions are narcotics to feeling. We spend a lot of time pining for a sense of comfort. We're looking for a numbing experience, an escape away from what is as it is. And so it makes sense while we begin to find or follow these particular distraction patterns and these reaction formations and rest in these thoughts, because it gives us a sense of a temporary reprieve from feeling. This actually isn't really the issue or what seems to be at the crux of what's going on. Even more primarily, it seems as if we are making some sort of conclusion around what we feel and then basically taking next steps from there. So feeling itself tends to work itself out. But if we constantly are treating feeling or a certain quality of feeling that we're perceiving as a problem, then we are essentially doomed to move into the reactions, doomed to move into the patterns of thinking, doomed to move into the patterns of distraction that essentially keep us away, at least perceptively, from what we feel. So here's the piece here. You must wean yourself off of the narcotic in order to reconcile, essentially, with truest nature, with what you feel, with that very foundational aspect of what it is to be a human being. If you investigate thoroughly enough, you will find at the very core of what it seems to be a person or a human, that sensation is absolutely the most primary experience. And then from there, the thoughts tend to apply interpretations, a sense of preference, I like it, I don't like it, a sense of qualification or compartmentalization. This is sadness, this is joy, this is frustration, anxiety, whatever it may be. And then from there, it gives us a slew of things that we can do to solve the apparent problem. Sit really, really still and pay a lot of attention. You will see that basically the majority of our suffering is predicated on almost an instantaneous sense of a conclusion. And that instantaneous conclusion is around the quality of what you're feeling. Something is telling you that it knows what you are feeling and it doesn't like it. And then from there, there's a domino effect, a chain reaction of reactions that can move us into deeper thoughts, can move us into distractions, it can move us into a reaction chain. But if you sit closely enough to the initial experience as it is, you begin to realize that it still requires a thought to have a particular context or quality of sensation. If you can sit right at that precipice, right at that moment, live in a way that your aperture is wide enough that you can see the very outset of that sensation before the thought tells you the quality, you might start to realize something. That these sensations are inherently formless. They don't actually have an intrinsic value or quality. They are like an empty canvas, always arising, and then the thoughts are ready to pounce and essentially paint that canvas, splattering it with color and meaning. That piece right there is essentially the first reaction. And that right there is a conclusion. It's saying something along the lines of, I don't like this. I have to fix this. I don't like this. I know this. I have to move away from this. I don't like this. I have to do anything other than experience this. So here's the gentle challenge. We could say, moving into the verification, can you actually prove it? Can you prove that what you're feeling is what the thoughts are telling you? Can you find elements of that sensation that are verifiable? Can you step so thoroughly into that experience that you can show that it either is the way the thoughts are telling you or isn't the way the thoughts are telling you? And you might just find in that type of engagement or exploration, in that aspect of immersion, that maybe you can't determine it either way, that it's neither uncomfortable or painful, nor is it comfortable and pleasant. It seems to be absolutely neutral and formless. That is the outset of emptiness. We could say totality, the supreme all connection, the gap, the stillness, the pause, empty totality, the everything and nothing. To start to rest with sensation in this way, you are essentially reifying or reconciling a relationship. This is what we're looking at. What is your relationship with these experiences that are primary? And if there is a relationship of moving away, resistance, hesitation, avoidance, now you know the outset of suffering. Because it's basically telling you that you have to do something about it. Instead of just allowing it to be as it is, resting in the experience, and simply letting it play itself out, letting it express. That's it. And this can look dynamic. It can look like in the midst of doing something. It can look also like sitting and resting in meditation. Paired with the last video, the one about the wedge technique, this is about a deeper investigation, or what we could say a more thorough or wider or more in tune investigation of sensation. Can you be with it as it is without taking the extra step of imparting some sort of quality to it? And you might start to see that it is inherently formless. It doesn't actually have any inherent quality. And that right there is such a juicy place to explore, because you will start to see how your relationship is essentially being painted, modified, adjusted, and manipulated with thoughts. Thoughts that are really hell-bent on creating patterns. And we start to run into this particular paradox along the way, that when we step outside of a pattern, it appears to take effort. Even if we're stepping outside of a pattern toward effortlessness, we find the paradox of it seems to take a little effort to realize effortlessness. But once resting in the midst of the outset of that experience of the sensation of that which is formless, nameless, untethered and unbound, we start to realize that it is inherently effortless, that there is no one doing this, it is just arising, and that the effort actually happens in the next steps. The effort happens in the moving away, the avoiding, the resisting. The effort happens in the hesitation around the sensation. And once that's recognized, you suddenly will have a sense of freedom. You could say a sense of a two-pronged path. You can engage the reaction, the distraction, the slew of thoughts. You can give attention there, or you can simply keep attention where it's already residing, and that is in the midst of sensation. Let this be your invitation. See if you can explore that close to home. See if you can sit that thoroughly in immediacy and see what arises. It might be impossible to put into words, of course. It might be impossible to translate to others, because this isn't a collection of experiences. This is an ongoingness, something that doesn't ever seem to go away, yet somehow is always different. Somehow always the same, yet never the same. And it seems to be right at that outset, right there, where you can see where the identity is essentially being formed in these reactions, in these distractions, and in these thoughts. We could say a reaction formation looks like a distraction formation, looks like a thought formation. And it's just predicating itself on a conclusion that I know what this is, I know I don't like it, and now I have to do something about it. This is where we start to realize the requirements, the have to. But if you don't know what it is, then maybe you don't have to do anything about it. We could say maybe this is the very impetus or the crux or the catalyst of stillness, the complete immediacy of what is still. So maybe take this on as an invitation. Can you be so immediate and so still that you see that very outset? Because in thought, it seems like it happens really rapidly, but in sensation, we start to recognize a gap. Before the thought even speaks, there is something right there, just like that. We'd love to hear more comments. If there's any questions, go ahead and put those in the comments below too. And let me know what it is to sit in the midst of this type of stillness. You might find it to be quite juicy.